My son burst through my door shouting, "Why'd you sell the apartment without me? My wife and I had plans." I looked at him, calm as Sunday morning, and said, "My name is still on the deed, sweetheart." He froze. His wife's smile cracked because they had no idea I'd already sold it legally weeks ago, and every penny was sitting safely in my trust, not theirs. You see, I'm Evelyn Ruth Carter, 68, retired teacher, and perfectly capable of reading fine print. But lately, my own daughter and son-in-law started treating me like a signature on legs. They called it protecting me. I call it trying to take my life while I'm still living it. So I played along. I baked cookies, I smiled through their speeches about the future, and the whole time I was recording every word. Because sometimes love turns into paperwork, and a mother's quiet no becomes the loudest sound in the room. My name is Evelyn Ruth Carter, and I am 68 years old. I live in a small brick house on a cul-de-sac outside Dayton, Ohio. The kind of place where everyone knows the trash schedule and the smell of fresh-cut grass means the high school band is back from practice. There's a crack in my front walk, shaped like a lightning bolt, and in March, the cardinals nest under my gutter. I keep my door the color of butter because yellow looks like a hope. People think storms announce themselves with thunder, but I've learned they start quieter than that, like an ache behind the eyes or a shadow that didn't used to be there. Mine began with a knock that rattled my wreath. The eucalyptus leaves swung so hard the twine went crooked, and before I could set down the dish towel, my son-in-law, Kyle, pushed the screen open with his knuckles like he owned the hinges. He said, "Evelyn, we need your signature, today." Behind him, my daughter Megan stood with her arms folded. She looked pretty the way girls on church bulletins look pretty, tidy, pressed, as if even a tear would ask permission before rolling down her face. She didn't look at me. Her eyes kept flicking to the papers like she was waiting for them to do the talking. I set the kettle on the stove. I told them, "Then you won't mind waiting for water to boil. Good decisions don't rush." Kyle smiled without letting any warmth reach the room. He said, "We're trying to protect you." He tapped the envelope. "You'll thank us later." I answered, "There's a second piece of news you need to hear, but we'll get to that in a minute." He followed me in, tracking bits of driveway grid on my rug. Megan closed the door soft, like she didn't want the neighbors to hear the weather changing in my kitchen. I poured coffee into my favorite chipped mug with the cardinals on it, poured water over a tea bag for Megan, and set a glass down for Kyle because he always said coffee made him jittery, though I'd seen him throw back energy drinks like water during football season. He slid the papers across the table: durable power of attorney, healthcare proxy, transfer on death form, tucked in the back like a stinger. I looked at the stack and felt my pulse steady, not spike. That surprised me, because 3 weeks ago when I found the first clue, my heart had learned a new rhythm. The clue was in my own living room. Megan had left her iPad on the couch unlocked. I didn't go snooping. I sat to fold laundry and the screen woke up on its own, as screens do. A calendar alert stared at me in blue letters. Mun, 10 a.m., notary, POA for mom, bring deed. I read it twice, then a third time. The iPad dimmed and brightened again, and I set it gently on the coffee table like it might bruise. That night, I heard Kyle step onto my porch and talk into his phone in the tone men use when they're sure they're right. I cracked the kitchen window to let the heat out and heard words that took the oxygen with them. He said, "Once I've got control, we'll list it off market. Her place will cover our refinance and the nursery. We're golden." The nursery. They had been trying for a baby. I knew that. I also knew that they found a Cape Cod on a quiet street near the elementary school and that the seller wanted a quick closing. They sent me the link at midnight with little heart emojis and a picture of a backyard with a swing already hanging from the maple tree. It is a dangerous thing, the pictures we paint of our futures. Sometimes the paint dries around someone else's life. I did not go out and confront him. I did not fling the window open and tell him to take his voice off my porch. I finished drying the baking sheet. I closed the window. I baked a meatloaf large enough to feed an army and set aside a plate with extra ketchup the way my husband, Hank, liked it when life still lined up on our calendar. Then I did something I hadn't done in a very long time. I asked for help. On Wednesday, I rode the number 7 bus to the downtown library. If you haven't been inside a library in a while, you should go. It smells like paper and promise. The free legal clinic meets on the 3rd floor in a glass room that looks out on the Veterans Memorial. A silver-haired attorney named Miss Patel sat across from me and listened until the listening itself felt like medicine. She explained words I didn't know I'd need: revocable living trust, successor trustee, advance directive. She said control and love sometimes wear the same sweater until you tug at a loose thread.
"Do I have to sell my house to be safe?" I asked. "No," she said. "You have to place it where your intent is clear and the path to mischief is narrow. Safety isn't always about leaving. Sometimes it's about locking." She helped me fill out forms. The county clerk stamped them with a thunk that traveled through my bones the way hymn notes do. By Friday, my home was titled to the Carter Living Trust. I appointed myself trustee because I am still here, and I named my neighbor, Mr. Alvarez, as successor. He carried mail on our street for 30 years and has a spine like an oak. He knows every dog by name and every back gate that never quite latches. I signed my own healthcare directive, naming my church friend Dolores, a nurse at the Miami Valley Hospital, as my medical agent. I moved my savings into the trust account. I set my bank app to buzz me if a stranger so much as looked at my balance. Then I changed the locks. The new doorknobs clicked like they were telling me a secret. I also asked Miss Patel a question that made me feel like a teenager asking for permission. If I record a conversation in my own home, is that legal? She told me how consent works in our state and what it would mean to be above board. I not only listened, I wrote it down. I have been accused of forgetting. I prefer to be guilty of remembering on paper. Back at my kitchen table, Kyle tapped the signature line with a pen. The pen had the name of a real estate team on it. Of course it did. "It's just paperwork," he said. "It protects you if anything happens." "From what?" I asked. "From falling, from scams, from your memory." The way he said memory sounded like he'd already stolen it. Megan tucked a stray hair behind her ear. "Mom, please, you know you forget things. You left the oven on at Easter." I left the oven on at Easter in 1998. We ate the marshmallows anyway. Kyle pushed the pen closer. "Sign and we can move forward. Sign and we can start our family without this hanging over us." I set the pen down. No. The air didn't move for a second. The kettle clicked as it cooled. The clock on the microwave turned over another minute, and we were all in the same place, except somehow I wasn't. "We can't keep renting," Megan whispered, like a confession. "We found a house. We need to put in an offer Monday." I reached for the other envelope I'd brought to the table. "Here's my second piece of news," I said, and slid it between the salt shaker and Kyle's fist. Inside were copies of the trust certificate, the new deed, my healthcare directive, and a letter I'd written them, dated and notarized, in case my voice shook. It didn't. "I met with an attorney," I said. "I've appointed my own agents. The house is already in a trust. You can't sign for me, and you can't list what you don't own." Kyle's smile changed shape. "You think a stack of papers keeps you safe? We can still petition the court. We can get guardianship." "You can try, but you'll be bringing 2 recorded phone calls to the judge, the ones where you discussed off-market and refinance, because I brought those too. And you'll be explaining why your notary appointment was scheduled before you asked me. I keep good notes."
Megan turned to Kyle. You scheduled a notary? Her voice did a small thing in the middle, like the ground dipping beneath a foot. I was being efficient, he said. This is what people do for aging parents. We're the responsible ones here. Help asks. Control decides. There's a difference. Kyle rose so fast his chair scraped back and hit the wall. We're not done. I answered, we are for today. If you need to see me again, text first. I'll respond when I'm ready. If you show up like this, I'll call the non-emergency number and ask for a civil standby. I already spoke with Officer Jacobs about how that works. He glared. He wanted a door to slam, so I didn't give him one. He walked out. Megan lingered long enough to look at me like I was a puzzle she used to be able to solve. I thought we were a team, she said. We are, I told her. But two adults on a team don't play with one person's name on all the jerseys. After they left, it rained, the kind that rinses pollen from the air and makes the world smell briefly new. I made a grilled cheese in the cast iron skillet Hank seasoned the summer we thought the calendar wouldn't dare cross us. The bread hissed just right when I flipped it, brown, not black, and I sat at the table with the sandwich and realized my hands weren't shaking. That is what relief looks like. Not fireworks. Lunch you made for yourself. The phone stayed quiet for a week. I went to water aerobics at the YMCA with women who called each other by first names and swapped crock pot recipes while tugging on swim caps. Dolores and I started a ritual, grilled cheese at the Apple Blossom Diner on Thursdays with lemon meringue pie if we were wise enough to split it. On Tuesdays, I attended quilting circle in the church basement where I learned my stitches were crooked and my laughter wasn't. The older ladies told me to start in the middle and work out because that's how any good thing gets built. On Sunday, I sat in the third pew from the back, where the stained glass makes everything look kinder. I prayed for Megan without telling God what to do with her. That's a hard kind of prayer, the kind where you hand a person back to the only one who knows how to carry them all the way. The second knock came softer. My sister-in-law, Jean, stood on my step with a pie and a face full of other people's words. Evelyn, she said, I heard what you did. Families take care of each other. They do, I said, keeping my threshold. And they listen when the oldest member says, I've got it handled. She brought up Thanksgiving and who hosted last year and whether I'd considered that, at your age, it might be better to have less to manage. I told her I had considered many age-appropriate things lately and found most of them unsatisfying. She left with her pie and her eyebrows still making question marks at me. I won't pretend it didn't hurt. No victory in my life has ever come without a bruise. Some nights I woke up and imagined an empty porch and a future where no one rang my bell. Some mornings I made coffee and pictured Megan in a house I'd never get to see, cutting birthday cake with the knife I bought her on sale at Kohl's. Grief is not always about death. Sometimes it is about a plan you have to bury with both hands. 2 weeks passed. Then, my mailbox held a plain white envelope with Megan's handwriting on the front. Inside was a letter that weighed more than the stamp would admit. Mom, it began. I started counseling. I didn't see how scared I was. Of money, of the future, of not being chosen. I let that fear drive our marriage. I'm sorry I used you like a plan instead of treating you like my mother. Kyle and I are on a break. I don't expect forgiveness. I'd like to earn a phone call someday. I'll wait for your timeline. I read it at the kitchen table with the afternoon light pushing through the many blinds and stripes. I cried the kind of crying that rinses instead of burns. I didn't rush to text back. Boundaries aren't made of speed. They're made of thickness and respect. The next person to reach out was Kyle's aunt, on Facebook of all things, typing in capital letters as if volume could cross the internet. "Family takes care of family. You should be ashamed." I blocked her. The older I get, the more I realize shame is a tool cheap builders use when they can't afford patience. I saw Kyle once, in passing, at the grocery store. He stood in the cereal aisle staring at the boxes like they were maps. We nodded like two people who once shared Sunday lunches and now share a town. He looked tired. He had a paperback book in his cart about managing stress, and I chose to see that as a small mercy. Summer came around the corner and knocked with sunlight. I planted tomatoes in the raised beds Hank built the year after his heart scare, when the doctor said move, and he took it as an invitation to move everything, including dirt. Mr. Alvarez hammered a new slat into the fence where the winter wind had pried it loose. He asked if I needed anything else, and I told him I needed someone to keep telling me I wasn't crazy. He laughed and said, "I can do that. I delivered this street for 30 years. You're one of the same ones." Dolores and I started walking laps at the park around the duck pond where teenagers take prom pictures and little boys fall in love with their reflection. On a Wednesday, I found a little card tucked under my windshield wiper. It was from the library, thanking me for a small monthly gift I'd set up for the bookmobile. The note said every $10 keeps books rolling to kids who don't have a way to get to the branch. I cried in my car, all by myself, then laughed, then cried again. It is a tender thing realizing you can still be a beginning at this age. By July, Megan texted to ask if she could bring me peaches from a farm on the other side of the river. I told her yes, and also no. Yes to peaches on my porch at noon. No to papers, money talk, or any conversation that would try to rewrite what we'd already written. She showed up with a brown paper bag that smelled like August. We sat on the top step with juice running down our wrists and talked about corn prices and a neighbor's new puppy and the way cicadas sound like someone shaking the sky in a jar. When she stood to leave, she asked if she could hug me. I said she could. It wasn't a movie hug. We didn't solve anything inside it, but we remembered how to hold without taking. The first real thaw came at a church potluck. We laid out dishes on folding tables, broccoli casserole, deviled eggs, ham slices painted with a thin layer of mustard that somehow makes them taste like home. Megan brought green bean casserole with crispy onions baked gold. Hank would have come back from the grave for that one. We ate our paper plate dinners at the end of the long line near the coat rack, because I wasn't ready for us to sit in the middle of the room where people who love you also watch you. After dessert, she took my hand. "Mom," she said, "thank you for not signing. I didn't know how scared I was until you told me no." "No is kindness when yes would break you," I said. I didn't know I believed it until I heard it in my own mouth. We started small rituals. She calls me on Wednesdays now. If she forgets, she texts a heart and we move the call. On Sundays, she sometimes sits beside me in church, and once I caught her singing the alto part by accident and smiled because she sounded like me. We bake on Saturdays when she's free, banana bread without nuts because life is full of enough surprises as it is, and she tells me what her counselor says about boundaries being a way to keep love in the right lanes. I do not chase Kyle for updates. Some stories are not mine to narrate. Sometimes he parks on the far side of the lot at the grocery and waits until I finish bagging my onions before he gets out. I see that as respect. Other times he walks by and nods And I nod back. People we once wanted to please become people we now want to bless from the distance that keeps everyone whole. That sentence took a long time to learn. Every now and then I still get mail with my name spelled wrong or a phone call from a number that looks local but is a stranger trying to sell me windows for a house they haven't seen. I hang up. I like my windows. I like the way the afternoon sits on my couch and the edge of the rug curls like a cat. I like the click the lock makes at night because it sounds like a decision.
In September, the town held harvest days on the courthouse square. I bought a jar of apple butter because you should always have a sweet thing on hand for when company arrives. The high school band blared Joy with a brass section, and the ladies from the Methodist church sold cinnamon rolls so good I made change with one hand and wiped tears with the other. A sign above the bookmobile door listed donors, and my name sat in small letters where no one would notice unless they knew to look. I noticed. That was enough. That night I wrote something on an index card and taped it to my bathroom mirror. Love without losing yourself. Help without handing over the keys. Say no without apology. And if you must choose, choose peace. I brushed my teeth and caught my own eye in the glass like we had secrets between us. I turned off the light and slept like a house that knows its foundation. There were other conversations, some straight, some crooked. Kyle texted once to ask if he could pick up his toolbox from my garage, and I said yes, with a time frame and the reminder to knock first. He did. He stood on the step with his cap in his hands, the kind of posture men wear when life has sanded them down to something truer. He said he was sorry. He said he should have known better. He said he had asked a judge at his church what guardianship really meant, and the judge told him it was for people who could not protect themselves, not for folks who refused to give someone else a shortcut. I wanted a shortcut, he admitted, looking at the azaleas like they might answer him. I called it love to make it feel right. It's slippery, that word. Gets away from you if you don't hold it by the handle. He nodded and left without asking for more. Sometimes that is the miracle, and you should not miss it while scanning the sky for another. Winter rolled in with its own clarity. I knitted a scarf badly and wore it proudly. Dolores and I tried yoga at the community center and laughed our way through poses named after animals we had never been. I learned to use the library app on my phone and returned a book before midnight with my thumb. The world keeps handing out small lights. I've started pocketing them. Megan wrote me another letter at the end of January. It said the counseling was changing her. It said Kyle had moved out for a while. It said she finally understood the difference between family and a financial plan, between support and surrender, between help and control. She thanked me for staying in my house and in myself. She said maybe she could start staying in herself too. When she came on Wednesday, she brought soup in a thermos, and we ate it at the table with crackers that splintered delightfully. We decided to treat it like a long drive, the kind where you don't ask how many miles left because the scenery changes enough to keep your heart busy. I still keep a blue binder in my hall closet. It holds the trust papers, my healthcare directive, copies of the deeds, the revocation I filed for an old permission I had given long ago without thinking how far it could reach. On top of the binder, I taped a list of phone numbers. Dolores, Mr. Alvarez, Miss Patel, the non-emergency police line, the church office. Preparation looks like caution to people who haven't needed it yet. To me, it looks like a warm blanket folded at the end of the bed. You hope not to need it. You sleep better because it's there. Sometimes people ask how I knew what to do. I tell them I didn't. I only knew what not to do.
Do not sign something you do not understand. Do not hand someone the keys if they have complained about the cost of gas for the last 3 months. Do not confuse pity with wisdom. Do not mistake a raised voice for a raised standard. And if a person you love brings papers to your table like they are setting down supper, read the menu twice. Ask what is being served. Ask who is paying, and if love has to look like this to count. Spring came back like it always does, stubborn and generous. The cardinals returned to the gutter and scolded me for sweeping the porch while they were in the middle of their business. I let them scold. The older I get, the more I let creatures be who they are without making it about me. That includes people. That includes Megan. That includes the man I used to think of as my son and now think of as a person who was part of our story, whether or not he occupies our table. On a Thursday in April, someone taped a flyer at the grocery store about a senior art show at the community center. I tore off a tab and signed up with a pencil that smudged. My painting looked like a sunset on a day that couldn't decide. Reds, oranges, a stripe of stubborn gray. The teacher said it was honest. I hung it up on the wall without asking if it belonged. Megan came to see the show. We stood in front of my canvas and she tilted her head in a way that made me love the shape of her profile. She said, "This middle stripe," pointing to the messy part where the orange bled into something murkier. "That's me last summer." "And this bright corner?" I asked, tapping a square that looked like someone had leaned in and whispered, "Look." She said, "That's you." And then she corrected herself. "That's me next." We went for grilled cheese after. The waitress at the Apple Blossom Diner refilled our water without being asked and called us sweetie in a voice that made me want to tip big. I ordered lemon meringue pie, and Megan said maybe we should share. And then we didn't share. We each ate our own and didn't apologize for dessert. That, too, is a kind of healing. On the first truly warm night of May, I sat on the porch with a bowl of strawberries and watched kids on scooters draw lines of noise down the asphalt. A mother yelled, "Look for cars!" And a boy yelled back, "I am!" That's all I want, to look for what's coming and to say out loud that I am. The porch light clicked on. A moth orbited it like a tiny moon. Cars whooshed by on the main road. Somewhere a dog barked at the courage it takes to pass a fence. I could hear the low hum of a game on someone's TV and the higher hum of a ceiling fan through my own window. My house sat around me like a blessing I didn't have to earn. If you stand on my porch and stare long enough at the front door, you can see where Hank patched a gint from the winter the wind slammed the screen so hard the knob bit the wood. You can't see where Kyle tried to push me because I didn't let him. You can't see where Megan cried because I held her on the porch where tears dry faster in the air. You can't see where my hand shook the day I called Miss Patel because my hand doesn't shake when I tape wisdom to a mirror. But if you knock, and if you are kind, and if you ask instead of assume, I might open. I might even hand you a strawberry and point at the sky and ask if that cloud looks like anything to you. And if you bring papers, if you set them down like a meal and tell me it's for my own good, then I will pour you water and I will sit, and I will read and I will ask my questions. I will be the oldest woman at this table and the calmest person in the room. I will choose my name before your plan. I will choose my house before your hurry. I will choose my peace because every other choice gets made better from there. Children are not a retirement plan. Boundaries are not betrayal. Love is not a deed. I am Evelyn Ruth Carter. I didn't sign and I am still here.